The Martyrs of Japan were Christians who were persecuted for the faith in Japan, mostly during the 17th century. Early Christianity in Japan. The shogunate and imperial government at first supported the Catholic mission and the missionaries, thinking that they would reduce the power of the Buddhist monks and help trade with Spain and Portugal. However, the shogunate was also wary of colonialism, seeing that the Spanish had taken power in the Philippines. After converting the population, the government increasingly saw Catholicism as a threat and started persecuting Christians. Christianity was banned and those Japanese who refused to abandon their Catholic faith were killed. On February 5, 1597, 26 Christians, 6 European Franciscan missionaries, 3 Japanese Jesuits and 17 Japanese laymen including 3 young boys, were executed by crucifixion in Nagasaki. These individuals were raised on crosses and then pierced through with spears. Persecution continued sporadically, breaking out again in 1613 and 1630. On September 10, 1622, 55 Christians were martyred in Nagasaki in what became known as the Great Gena Martyrdom. At this time Roman Catholicism was officially outlawed. The Church remained without clergy and theological teaching disintegrated until the arrival of Western missionaries in the 19th century. While there were many more martyrs, the first martyrs came to be especially revered, the most celebrated of whom was Paolo Miki. The Martyrs of Japan were canonized by the Catholic Church on June 8, 1862 by Blessed Pius IX and are listed on the calendar as SDS. Paul Miki and his companions, commemorated on February 6. Originally this feast day was listed as SDS, Peter Baptist and 25 companions, martyrs, and commemorated on February 5. Drawn from the oral histories of Japanese Catholic communities, Shusaku Endo's acclaimed novel Silence provides detailed accounts of the persecution of Christian communities and the suppression of the Church. The 26 Martyrs of Japan. The 26 Martyrs of Japan refers to a group of Christians who were executed by crucifixion on February 5, 1597 at Nagasaki. On August 15, 1549, St. Francis Xavier, Fr. Cosmo de Torres, S.J., and Fr. John Fernandez arrived in Kagoshima, Japan, from Spain with hopes of bringing Catholicism to Japan. On September 29, Francis Xavier visited Shimizu Takahisa, the daimyo of Satsuma, asking for permission to build the first Catholic mission in Japan. The daimyo agreed in hopes of creating a trade relationship with Europe. Within a year, however, he reneged on this promise and made it illegal for people to convert, a promising beginning to those missions. Perhaps as many as 300,000 Christians by the end of the 16th century met complications from competition between the missionary groups, political difficulty between Spain and Portugal, and factions within the government of Japan. Christianity was suppressed. By 1630, Christianity was driven underground. The first martyrs of Japan were canonized in 1862. They are commemorated on February 5 when on that date in 1597, 26 missionaries and converts were killed by crucifixion. 250 years later, when Christian missionaries returned to Japan, they found a community of Japanese Christians that had survived underground. 205 Martyrs of Japan. They are also known as Alfonso Navarrete Benito, Pedro of Avila, Carlo Espinola, Joaquim Diaz Hirayama, Lucia de Freitas, and 200 companion martyrs of Japan. Among them are B.L. Keys of Korea, B.L. Thomas Sugi, killed 1627, beatified on the 7th of May 1867. The Great Martyrdom of Nagasaki. After the shogun decided that Christianity needed to be suppressed, the Christian teachers were ordered to leave the country. They did so, however. A few decided to return secretly, including the Augustinian Father Pedro de Zúñiga and the Dominican Father Luis Flores. They went on board a ship from Manila captained by a Japanese Christian named Joachim. The vessel, however, was captured and plundered by the Dutch, who reported to the Japanese that there were Catholic priests on board. They were imprisoned in Hirato. However, they broke out of prison with the help of another Dominican father from Manila. All the prisoners were recaptured, and the emperor ordered the governor of Nagasaki to burn alive Captain Joachim with his entire officers and crew, the 2 priests, and all the other monks in this and other prisons, as well as all the wives and children of those who had previously been martyred. The governor then proceeded to Hirato and examined the prisoners. He questioned them about whether they were Christians, where they were born, and when they were baptized. He instructed them to renounce Christianity, and that the emperor had given him a promise that if they did so, their lives would be spared. They repeatedly refused to renounce the faith. Therefore, the governor ordered the captain and the 2 priests to be burned alive, and for 10 sailors to be beheaded. The 3 to be burned asked for what reason they were being killed, and when upon being told they were being executed for illegally seeking to spread the Christian faith in Japan, they rejoiced for being able to die for Christ. They were executed in Nagasaki on August 19, 1622. The sailors were first beheaded, as the 3 were made ready for burning. Before they were burned, Joachim began preaching to the crowd that he had come to watch. He was ordered to stop, but he asked what greater pain they could inflict upon him than which they were already going to do. The fire was then set, and Joachim continued to preach as he was being burned. The heads of the 3 were removed and placed upon a board as a public warning. The bodies were left where they were for several days, and large crowds of Japanese Christians arrived, venerating them. The guards beat them. The son of Alvaro Manrique de Zúñiga, Marqués de Villa Manrique, obtained a relic of Pedro de Zúñiga, to whom he was related. The governor of Nagasaki then retrieved 52 prisoners from Omura, including 21 monks, some of whom had been imprisoned for many years in very cruel conditions. At the same time, he also summoned an additional 30 prisoners in Nagasaki. The governor ordered all of them to be sentenced to death by beheading. This execution order also included the prisoners' children. On the day of execution, prisoners carried crosses in their hands, while singing hymns praising God and condemning Japanese gods. Many of the crowd that came to watch them included Christians, with reportedly crying and wailing by those who recognized the priests who had converted them. The priests in answer to this told the crowd that God would give them other teachers and that they needed to keep the faith until death. There were 2 groups of executions, one by burning and the other by beheading. 4 Japanese lay Christians who had entertained priests in the houses, as well as 25 priests and monks, were issued a stake where she was to be burned. Each priest kissed the stake he was given many times, and their example was followed by the Japanese Christians. The 25 priests and monks were Father Charles Spandola, S.J., Father Fray Angel Ferrer, Op. Father Fray Joseph de S. Jacinto, Op. Father A. Jacinto, Op. Father Sebastian Wimura, S.J. Father Fray Pedro de Avila, OFM. Father Fray Richard de Santan, OFM. Father Fray Alonso de Mena, Op. Father Fray Francisco de Morales, Op. Brother Fray Vicente, OFM. Brother Fray Leon, Brother Antonio Fugia, S.J., Brother Gonzalo Fusi, S.J., Brother Pedro Zampo, S.J., Brother Miguel, S.J. The next 8 are not known, but they were all Japanese, and the first 4 of the 8 belonged to the order of preachers. The last 2 were Brother Tomogassen and Brother Luis Cavarato. Insufficient stakes were present, so an additional Jesuit brother named Iuan Chakiko was instead beheaded. As the preparations for execution were conducted, Father Espinola asked one of the mothers being beheaded where her son was. The mother lifted the 5-year-old child in her arms and answered, "Father Espinola, Father, here is my son. I will offer him to God. He will become a martyr with me." The Japanese first beheaded the 30 men and women from Nagasaki, as well as 12 of their children. The reason for beheading before lighting the fire was in order to dishearten those to be burned. For the same purpose, the wood was set up so that there was distance between the wood that was initially lighted and the wood that rested under those tied to the stakes, thus giving the martyrs more time to think about their approaching painful death. The burning took place over several hours, and it was claimed that Father Wimura lasted 3 hours alive. After the end of the burning, many local Christians attempted to gather relics, but they were beaten by the guards. In order to prevent the collection of relics, the guards also destroyed the bodies by burning them to ashes, and the ashes were then taken to sea and scattered into the water. On the following day, the sacristan Gaspar Contengan Doxico, companion of Father Camillo Constancio, was beheaded along with 2 children of martyrs, as well as a Christian who had been caught by gathering relics at night along with his entire family in Omura. On September 12, 15 more Christians were executed in Omura. This included Father Fray Tomás de Sumariga, Father Fray Apollino Franco, a Japanese laywoman caught praying among the bodies, as well as several more Japanese Christians. 10 more were martyred at Ikinotima, together with Brother Augustin Onda. Father Camilo Constancio was burnt alive on September 15 at Ferrando, while English and Dutch ships were anchored at harbor. On September 23, 6 farmers were executed in Nagasaki. 3 of them were burned because Jacinto Dominico was found at the house, and 3 were beheaded. On October 2, 9 more were executed in Nagasaki, including 3 children. One of them was tortured for 7 days in order to get him to denounce the priests. After failing to get his cooperation, the executioners slit his back and poured molten lead into the wound, after which they burned him along with his entire family and scattered the ashes to the sea. The following year, on May 27, 2 Christians were executed in Hirato. One of them had hosted Father Camilo, and the other had transported him by boat to various places for his missionary work. An old man of 85 years of age on June 2 had heavy rocks tied to his feet and was thrown into the sea. On the following day, another companion and helper of Father Camilo was executed. Another was executed on June 8 for the same reason. On July 26, 2 more Christians were executed for refusing to lend the horses to help transport the bodies of those killed. Another was later martyred for this same reason. There was also a martyrdom in a small farmer's village, along with 2 others charged with assisting those that were martyred. The last martyr to be recorded in this wave was on November 1. Father Pedro Paulo Navarro had preached in Japan for 36 years, and he was burnt alive along with his guide, and Brother Dionisio and Brother Pedro Sandeo. Jesuit fathers and others who had successfully fled to the Philippines wrote reports, which led to a pamphlet that was printed in Madrid in 1624, a short account of the great and rigorous martyrdom, which last year was suffered in Japan by 118 martyrs. 16 Martyrs of Japan. They are also known as Lorenzo Ruiz, Dominic Ibanez de Aquicia, James Cushai Tomonaga, and 13 Companions, Philippines, Martyrs in Japan. They are: San Lorenzo Ruiz, killed 1637, one of the Tomasian martyrs; Antonio Gonzalez, one of the Tomasian martyrs; Domingo Ibanez de Urquiza, Jacobo Cushai Gorabayeto Monaga de Santa Maria, Francis Schoimon, Jordan Ancelone, Lazarus of Kyoto, Luke Alonso, Marina of Omura, Magdalene of Nagasaki, Matthew Koiyoye, Michael Taeo Zaraza, Michael Kurobaye, Thomas Rokus Aoyemon, Vincent Shiwazuka, William Quartet, beatified February 18, 1981, canonized 18 October 1987. Martyrs of Japan. Martyrs of Nagasaki, who were the 3rd of September 1632, scalded in boiling water and then burned alive at the stake in Nishizuka, Nagasaki. Anthony Ishida, Fr. B.L. Bartolome Gutierrez Rodriguez de Espinosa, a Mexican, was burned alive after suffering tsurushi in hot sulfur baths for almost a year. Francisco Terrero de Ortega Perez, Gabriel Tarazona Rodriguez, Jerome of the Cross de Torres, Vicente Simões de Carvalho, beatified 7 July 1867 by Pope Pius IX. On the 11th of December 1632 there were executed 2 Augustinian priests, Martin Lumbreras Peralta and Melchor Sanchez Perez, beatified 23rd of April 1989. Petrus Kibikasui and 187 companion martyrs of Japan, murdered between 1603 and 1639. They include the martyrs of Yachishiro, the martyrs of Yamaguchi, Leo Saishio Shichimon of Samurai from Sendai, the martyrs of Akatsuki, the martyrs of Arima, Adam Arakawa, a catechist from Amakusa, the martyrs of Kyoto, the martyrs of Kumamoto, John Haramondo of Samurai killed in the Great Martyrdom of Edo, the martyrs of Hiroshima, the martyrs of Unzen, the martyrs of Yonezawa, Michael Kuzuria, the Good Samaritan of Nagasaki, who was burned alive in Nishizuka Hill, Ambro, Nicholas Kian Fukunaga, a Jesuit brother who was the first Christian to suffer the gallows and the pit, or gallows and hole, tsurushi or lit, hang hole, a torture in which the condemned individual is fixed head down to a wooden beam and lowered to his or her waist into a pit filled with garbage. Fr. Julian Nakaura, a Jesuit priest, one of the 4 boys who were sent as emissaries to Europe in Nagasaki on October 21, 1633. Fr. Diego Yuki Ryazetsu, a Japanese priest who suffered the gallows and the pit in Osaka in 1636. Fr. Thomas Jihayo, one of the hermits of St. Augustine. Fr. Peter Kibikasui, a Jesuit priest who suffered the gallows and the pit in Tokyo in 1639. They were beatified on 24 November 2008.